For decades, we thought we had a pretty good handle on the size and shape of the global economy. But what if the map we've all been using was, well, fundamentally flawed? We're about to dive into a groundbreaking paper from the World Bank that shows us a new way of measuring our world. And it reveals an economy that is so much larger and more connected than we ever imagined. Okay, so let's get right into it. From the phone that's probably in your hand to the coffee in your cup, pretty much everything you touch is the product of a global supply chain. These chains, they're the real backbone of our modern world. And understanding them, it's absolutely crucial for everything. So let me ask you something. How much of your country's economy do you think is really plugged into the rest of the world? You probably have a number in your head, right? Well, what we're about to find out is that the traditional answer to that question is almost certainly wrong. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, let's nail down our key term, a global value chain or a GVC. The easiest way to think about it is like a global assembly line, right? A chip might be designed in the US, made in Taiwan, and then put into a phone over in Vietnam. That whole journey, that's a GVC. Now, why do we care so much? Because these chains are a total double-edged sword. On one hand, they offer these incredible opportunities for countries to grow and specialize, but on the other, they create brand new risks, making entire economies vulnerable to shocks happening thousands of miles away. And here's the kicker. If you can't measure them accurately, there's no way you can manage them effectively. And that brings us right to the heart of the problem. For years, the ways we've tried to measure these vital chains have been, to put it gently, flawed. We just haven't been seeing the whole picture. Honestly, the best analogy is this. Our old view of the global economy was like a blurry photograph. You could kind of make out the general shape of things, the big picture of global trade, but all the critical details, all those tiny, intricate connections between industries and countries, they were completely out of focus. So what exactly was making the picture so blurry? Well, first off, the old metrics only looked at trade, the stuff crossing borders. They completely missed the massive amount of domestic activity that supports those exports. Plus, they tried to sort everything into just two simple buckets. Either you were buying parts from other countries, which they called backward linkages, or you were selling parts to other countries, forward linkages. That super simple split just couldn't capture how these chains really work, and it led to some seriously weird and distorted results. And you can really see the problem in the data itself. For years, the traditional numbers suggested that, on a global scale, countries were importing more parts for their supply chains than they were exporting. Think about that for a second. It just doesn't add up, right? This created this bizarre, puzzling imbalance. It was a massive clue that our camera lens was basically broken. So how do we fix it? This is where the new thinking from the World Bank paper is a total game changer. It's like we're finally upgrading from an old, blurry film camera to a state-of-the-art, high-resolution digital one. And for the first time, we can see the global economy with stunning clarity. The first big innovation is this new three-part framework. Think of it like a relay race. You've got pure forward participation. That's your first runner, starting the race by exporting raw materials. Then you have pure backward. That's the anchor, the one who takes the baton and crosses the finish line. But the key insight, the piece we were totally missing, was identifying that crucial middle runner. Two-sided participation. This is the country or industry that takes the baton and passes it on. And here's the second breakthrough. Instead of just measuring the stuff being loaded onto ships, the trade, the new method measures the GVC's role in a country's entire economic output. This is huge. It captures all the domestic suppliers, the service providers, the logistics guys, basically everyone who contributes to that final export, even if their own product never leaves the country. Okay, so we've got our new high-res camera. We point it at the global economy, and what we see is genuinely shocking. The picture that comes back is completely different from the one we had before. Get ready for this. So, using the old blurry trade-based numbers, the world's GVC-related trade was pegged at around $10 trillion. That's a massive number, no doubt. But it turns out it was only telling us half the story. But when you switch to this new high-resolution view that includes total output, here it is, the big reveal. Global value chains are actually worth nearly $20 trillion. That's right, the interconnected global economy is literally twice as big as we thought it was. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The source paper itself makes it crystal clear. Relying only on those old trade-based numbers gives you a fundamentally incomplete and frankly underestimated view of globalization. So let's go back to that strange puzzle from before. This is what the old view showed us. Backward participation, using imported parts, was always mysteriously bigger than forward participation, supplying parts to others. On a global scale, that just doesn't make any sense. It can't be true. And voila, the new framework completely solves the puzzle. By identifying that two-sided middle ground, we finally see the truth. That middle of the chain makes up a massive 60% of all GVC output. And here's the beautiful part. The start of the chain, pure forward, and the end of the chain, pure backward, are now perfectly balanced at 20% each. The books finally add up. So what that huge 60% slice of the pie is telling us is profound. Most of the economic action in global supply chains isn't happening at the very beginning with raw materials or at the very end with final assembly. No, it's happening in these complex, crucial middle stages where countries and firms are simultaneously importing, adding value, and then exporting again. Okay, so the map is redrawn, the global economy is twice as big, and the middle is where all the action is. So what? What does this new view actually mean for countries, for industries, and for how we all think about risk? Well, for one, this new map completely changes how we measure a country's resilience. Take China during its early reform years. The old view made it look incredibly vulnerable because its small export sector was super reliant on GVCs. But the new, output-based view shows that those exports were just a tiny fraction of China's enormous domestic economy. The country was way more insulated than we thought. It shows our old risk assessments weren't just a little bit off. In a lot of cases, they were just plain wrong. And this brings us to a much more sophisticated view of these chains. Yes, being deeply integrated means a factory shutdown halfway around the world can bring your production line to a halt. But it also means that when your own domestic market takes a nosedive, you have a diverse set of customers all over the world to keep you afloat. A car parts maker in Mexico, for instance, isn't just selling to the US anymore, but to plants in Europe and Asia. That diversification is a powerful form of economic insurance. So let's just recap the big takeaways from our new economic map. First, and this one is just stunning, the globalized economy, when you measure it right, is double the size we imagined. Second, services and all those sectors far from the final export are way more important than trade data ever let on. Third, the real action, the majority of the value, is created right in the middle of the chain. And finally, because of all this, we have to fundamentally rethink how we look at economic risk and how we build resilience. Look, this isn't just some academic update. This changes everything. It gives us a new, high-resolution map for policymakers, for business leaders, for anyone trying to navigate our complex world. So the big question we're left with is this. Now that we can finally see the global economy for what it really is, how will we change the way we operate within it?